Podcasting with Ceri Jones.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. This week's guest first picked up a fly rod just 6 years ago, and she is now an accomplished salmon fly angler. Although from Durham, she regularly travels across the border to fish the Tweed and the Tay in Scotland in search of a quarry. Even though she does fish for trout and grayling also, it's easy to tell just by listening to our chat her passion lies with salmon. She has already caught a couple of springfish this month and recently passed a coaching level 2 with the Angling Trust. Welcome to my chat with Lucinda Ewin. I got to start by saying you've had a hell of a start the season, haven't you?
Oh, brilliant. Definitely. Started putting on the lottery on it's been that good, actually.
Have you actually been out this weekend?
No, I haven't been out this weekend. Unfortunately, I've been doing quite a bit of studying, so I've just recently qualified for my level 2 lead coaching, which is done by the Angling Trust.
All right.
So
yeah.
I started my level 1 just before COVID, and then COVID hit, and then I tried to get the level 2 completed last year. Then I come down with COVID, and then we've recently had some snow, so we finally got it rearranged to Saturday. And I passed that, so that's good stuff.
What did that entail then, level 2?
So your level 2 is kind of your lead coach. So you start with your Angling Trust, your level 1, which is assistant coach. So you can go along and help your coaches and things like that, support the team, help deliver the sessions and things like that. And then you can kind of progress on to your level 2. Which is then your lead coach. So that means you can take sessions yourself. You manage your sessions, plan your sessions. Just gives you a bit more coverage of what it is you can and can't do. Do you know what I mean? And to kind of encourage people who are now on level 1 to come and progress on to level 2 and stuff. So yeah, it's really good. So
and that's through the Angling Trust, you said, is it?
Yeah, the Angling Trust. Yeah, it's a recognised licensed coaches scheme that they do.
All right.
So it was just something else to get under my belt. I helped teach down at the Northern Fishing School some weekends, mainly with beginners and things like that. And I already had my level 1, but I wanted to get my level 2 so that I can kind of go on a little bit further and sort of broaden my horizons a little bit.
Well, where do you want to take it then? You want to start doing some instruction or guiding or?
No, it's just something I get enjoyment out of, and where I see myself at the moment is obviously I get so much enjoyment out of fishing, and I'm so keen just to encourage other people into the sport, especially like women and children. I mean, I've got children myself, so I try to encourage. I just know the actual benefits from fishing, not just the fishing itself, how it's good for your health and things like that.
Do they fish as well, the children?
Yes, they do. My eldest one, he's really getting into it now. So he just started off with a little spinning rod and off he took himself for brown trout. And now he's, I think he's had 3 salmon on the fly now. So he got...
Really?
Yeah, he's doing all right. He's doing pretty good. So, and it's just a good way to spend time together as a family as well, where we're not all just sat round televisions and stuff like that.
Yeah. Have you ever been down to Wales?
I have actually. We spent the last 4 summers with family down in a place. I call it Donegaloo, but it's pronounced Dolgethly.
Donegaloo. I like that. Yeah.
Donegaloo. That's what we call it. The kids call it Donegaloo, but I have learned it's Dolgethly.
Up in North Wales, yeah. There's good salmon fishing up there and sea trout, actually.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realise that. And one of the guys I know who's done it.
Tickle me, I don't know. Donegaloo.
Do you know what? I should know better as well, because when I was a child, my dad worked in North Wales, so I spent a lot of time down kind of as if Felly and places like that, and Porthmadog. Yeah, so I did get to know the names of places, but is it Rob Redman who's doing an article for you in your next magazine? He actually fishes that river where we were on holiday, and I was like, right, you're going to have to take me out to sea trout.
I fished with him last year in well, there's two rivers there in Dolgellau. There's one called the Winion, and the other's the Mawddach. And we went out sea trout fishing at night. We did, and
did you get one?
I lost one the first night, probably about £4, and it was pitch black. And I brought it into the side, and I got a habit then. I do like to see the fish, so I put the torch on. A lot of people don't like to put torches on when you sea trout fishing. And as soon as I put it on, he came into the net, and he came off as he inches from the net.
I've done a bit of night fishing
for the sea trout.
Yeah. So the River Weir, that's a really good sea trout river, and I'm only like 10 minutes away from it in Durham.
All right.
And I had one season where I put a lot of time into it, and I got fish. I think I got three fish one year, and it was like on black and red tubes, but always finding work in them. And last year I was trying to fish, like smaller flies. Now I think is it called the Peter Ross fly?
Yeah.
Peter Ross.
Yeah, Peter Ross.
Yeah. So somebody said fish one of them, and I went out one night and I tried that, and I just kept catching brown trout all night. So I found it frustrating, and then it just got so warm and the conditions so rubbish. I kind of thought, I'm not going out till 3 o'clock in the morning. And I've got to be up at work, and the conditions not great. So I kind of was a bit half-hearted last year, but I am going to try.
Weekday, it's a killer. I don't do so much of it now. I went for about 3 or 4 years. I was well into it. And then, you fish till, like I said, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock sometimes. And then you get up to go to work then at like 7. And throughout the day then, come like 3, 4 o'clock, you're hanging. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
But
it's hard, isn't it? And that's another reason that it's for the hardcore, definitely.
But the good thing is, I think luckily for me, I got friends who they massively into it. And I get the nod. So they say, there's fishing, want to come tomorrow or come tonight. And it's great then, and you have some sport.
I like what you said there as well, like when you get the call to say there's fish coming through. And it is funny in the fishing world, isn't it? And how quickly word spreads when fish turn up somewhere. So it's like you'll get a call and go, there's fish here, you've got to come, drop and come. And I can't drop and come, it's Monday.
So you put your gin down in the nightclub and you just go.
Yeah, that's it. And then, but like, I think it's nice to hear as well when you hear, especially going back to the salmon fishing, and you hear of a pod. I've seen it where I've been on beats before, and I've watched a pod of fish come through, and I've watched somebody downstream hook into a fish, and then nothing, and then about 15 minutes later, I've hooked into a fish, and then I've gone on the fish catchers later on and seen where other people have caught fish, and it's like, that was definitely a pod coming through there. Do you know what I mean? And they'll come through and then they'll hold up in a beat. So I'm a big, it is, I love to see that, and I love to hear it when you get the call and somebody will go, we've got fish here at the minute. It's brilliant. And
it's lovely. I tell you, there's nothing quite like it when you get to a spot and you just look over the edge of a bridge and you see them just lying there in the current. You know? And you just wait.
Yeah, lovely. I've seen that.
And you just, I remember once, I was fishing a river in Iceland, and the Tunga float, and we were fishing for sea trout. And this guide was with me, and then it got to this road bridge. It's wide, really super wide river, and then we literally went on our hands and knees. And he said, "Right, look over the edge now." And there was this fish, about £4, sea trout. Yeah, I thought, brilliant. Yeah. And he said, "No, hang on, we won't fish them yet. We'll go the other side of the bridge." We're on the other side of the bridge, and there was a salmon there then. A big salmon, well, I say big, it's about £15. And,
that's big.
Yeah, and so what I did then, he said, right, you go upstream, which I did when I spooked the £4 then, because he see me coming, he went. And then I was using him as my eyes. So he had his head over the edge of the bridge looking for this salmon, and I was upstream then. And then I was casting, and he said, right, it's coming round. And he was telling me, right, he's coming for it, strike. And I lifted, and he goes, oh, no, I went too soon. I thought, well, you should have said strike. And anyway, I done it the second time, and I had it. I had the salmon then. And,
good going.
The good thing was, right, that this was years ago, and he filmed it. And I gave him the camera, and he filmed it, and with the fly coming around, and he come up, and he took and the whole thing was filmed. Me playing it rather. But I was
have you got it on video?
I have, yeah. The whole.
You'll have to send me it. Send me it over.
And he was £14 it was, but he was a big cock salmon, but he had the autumn colours.
Big cape on him.
Yeah, massive cape.
Oh, brilliant. I've had that once before where I've been fishing and I've had like a gilly up on the bank and you could see them, you just put your Polaroids on and there was like 4 or 5 salmon laid in this pool and he was like, right, go down, you're getting to them now. And he was like, well, that was your chance, you went for it then, you pulled your fly out too soon, but they were literally watching my fly swing round and, you know, it was in the summer, it was a red hot day and it's weird. If they are not in the mood, they are not in the mood. Yeah. I've like, when you've watched them, they're like, you just can't get a take out of them.
Well, you've had a great start to this season. Is it 2 salmon you've had so far?
Yeah. So usually in springtime, now I'm back at work full time. Last couple of years, I've had so much time on my hands to go and fish. And for example, last year, I think it was about 120 hours I fished before I got my first collection with the salmon. And it's quite a lot of blanking time.
Yeah.
And it's just so strange. I think this year I decided, right, I'm just going to try and stay a bit closer to home. So I thought, we'll go to the Tweed, we'll try that. And given the conditions we've had over the winter, it's been quite a mild winter, I think you'll agree on.
Yeah.
We haven't had the wettest of winter. We haven't had no major floods and things like that. So a lot of the fish that's come into the system have not really had the encouragement to push through with the low water levels. So luckily we were fishing low water beats. And typically the beats that we fish better in high water, you know, for flow on the pools that they have specifically. But also I think we've just had that little bit of extra help there with the water keeping the fish, holding them back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've just, do you know what it is? It is just lucky. I mean, very lucky. I mean, I always say to myself, I always push myself to get one. I always want one spring fish a year. So I will really like push and push and push. And then I know last year it got to May and I started sweating and getting really hard on myself. And I was like, what's going on? I mean, and then you start calling, I can't fish. And then I'm questioning people, am I a bad fisherman?
Yeah, but it didn't help last year, mind. We didn't have much water, did we? So maybe that had something to do with it.
And do you know what it is as well? I think it's definitely right. What I've noticed as well with the spring fishing is my like advice to anybody, how I find it, and now I do take it on board, is you can't catch what isn't there.
Exactly.
And I think what we find as well now, obviously everybody's aware of the decline in salmon stocks and stuff like that. I mean, for example, I'm down in County Durham, and I just look at it as if I was a spring fish, I wouldn't come into my river because our gravel beds, our pools are filled in, they've all washed down and filled up with gravel. Do you know what I mean? There's no real holding spots for spring fish. And then you think if we had a dry summer like we had last year, you wouldn't come in to sit in water that's going to put you at risk with no oxygen and stuff like that. So I think the fish do hold off a bit, and like I say, there's not as many returning. But like I said, the positive news is that they are starting to show up now. I've just been watching social media and the fish catchers and things today, and you can just see they're starting to creep in now, and in most rivers across Scotland and 1 or 2 across England as well. So
you're from Durham. How far is the Tweed from where you are?
Where I fish, I'm an hour and a half from, so it's what I class as like doable in a day. So I can just get up, drive up, and fish, then head back on an evening. I do tend to fish a lot further up in Scotland now. I spend a lot of time on the Tay, which I do like. But I find it's such like, I think it's volume wise in its water. It's one of the biggest with depths and things. It holds that much volume of water. Yeah. It's renowned for being one of the biggest ones, and I always think it always carries that extra challenge on the Tay. Yeah. Obviously, you've got much deeper water to go out. You've got some really wide bits of water to cast across as well. So I've always gone there, and I think the thing is with the Tay as well, you've always got that chance of a good fish, like a really big one.
Yeah.
But when you go to the Tay, that's a 3.5 hour drive. So that's when we start saying, oh, well, we've got a stopover and things like that. So it's just trying to balance it out. And I was like, well, actually, if we sacrifice the stopover, we can then input that into a bit more money on where we fish on the Tweed and work it like that. So that's what we've done this year, and it's worked well. I've been, like I say, really lucky. I've only been able to fish on weekends.
Yeah. How many times have you been this year then?
I'm laughing because it's ridiculous. I have had 5 trips out, and in 5 trips I've had 2 fish on separate occasions.
Well, that's good, really, isn't it?
That, to me, that, like, anybody who salmon fishes for spring fish, and in March, it's early for spring fish still, so it really is very good going. It's my best season I've had since I've started fly fishing. So
yeah, I've seen the pictures. They're really bright, clean fish as well, aren't they?
Yeah. Do you know when you first start salmon fishing, you kind of think you just want to catch a salmon, and then you get chatting to people and things like that, and then people go, "Oh, the spring salmon though," and I'm like, "Yeah, like I'm not bothered. A salmon's a salmon." And as I've progressed on now, and now the last few years, since I've started, I've been lucky enough to catch a spring salmon every year. Only this year I've never been as lucky to have 2 in March, and it's just the condition of them. They're just so pristine. They just the bodies on them, they're very streamlined. They've got these real pointy noses with a great big hump on the backs, and they just really are in beautiful condition. And then obviously you can get them with some sea lice on, and then it just gives you that little bit of excitement. You think, "Oh wow, that fish has only been in here a day maybe," and I've managed to connect with him. So it is exciting. And I still think summer fish are nice, and his back end fish, I think if you get a cock salmon and he's got his nice tartan colours on the big cape, I think they are still a beautiful looking creature but definitely the spring salmon are very special indeed. And I think because you know how hard they are to come across, it makes it that more rewarding when you do connect with one.
Yeah, I think generally probably the rivers up there are the same as here. You get less fish in the spring, but they tend to be the bigger ones. And it's nice when a plan comes together then, doesn't it? And I suppose when you've had a fish, you think, like, I wonder if it's come with a couple of others. And you're thinking then you're going to get more, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of, I always say I'm not a greedy fisherman, so I'm quite happy to go out and catch a fish. Like when I got my first one this year, I was like, first thing about it is your first fish, it's always pressure off. And I don't know about yourself, but I always I think everybody does it, that first fish of the season to get that bit of pressure off.
Yeah.
And I know you are out to enjoy your fishing, but deep down we all do want to catch a fish. And then once you've caught one, it's kind of like, oh, that's it now. I can kind of sit back and relax a bit and just enjoy it. So for a second one to come so soon after, I was like, this is madness.
So how big were the ones you had?
Well, I think on the Tweed, the ones I've picked up on the Tweed have always been around the kind of like sort of 7 to 9 pound mark. I've never had anything like double figured off the Tweed yet. But on the Tay last year, I had 2. I think one was 12, one 14, and then the year before I got one about 12 on the Findhorn. So they haven't been the biggest, but they've become definitely the most welcomed.
What sort of flies were you? Are there different techniques you would use at the start of the season?
Yeah, obviously with the spring fishing, the water temperature's cold, but it hasn't really been cold this year, has it? We're looking at the temperatures. I think we've only really had a couple of real good frosts. So we I sort of look at the temperature first and say where we at. If I am on a beat with a gilly, I'm going to ask for the gilly's advice. He knows that water, he knows the layers, he knows sort of what's fishing well at what height. Usually I'd be fishing kind of T10s and T14s in March time because it's usually that cold. But I've literally this year been fishing kind of 3 inch per second, 4 inch per second tips, and then just putting sort of like a tungsten cone on. And what I've done also with the water levels being low, I haven't been putting big flies on either. Just kind of 1/2 inch tubes and stuff like that, 1 inch tubes, and the water's that clear up there as well. The fish are going to see the fly, so I think you don't need to go. The kind of rule is, isn't it, get down big, deep, and dirty. And I don't think it necessarily has to be like that in the spring. I think you have to be reading the conditions.
Yeah.
Where I fish as well isn't really deep water, and I'm kind of got this theory going on in my head at the moment, and I'm trying to understand the salmon. I'm thinking, so if a fish comes in at spring and it's cold, is the fish going to swim along the bottom of the riverbed, or is he going to fish at a certain height under the surface and stay at that consistent height? Does that make sense? You imagine a pool. So an area of your pool could go down to 8-9 foot. Is that fish going to sit down and go along the bottom of the gravel? So I don't know.
I don't know if you've listened to, there's a couple of podcasts I've had recently with the guy John Graham. And
Right.
he fishes on the deck. And he will use the heavy lines. And then he'd only use 18 inches a leader. And then he'd fish, you know, almost like a booby style lure. He's amongst the fish, and he's in the Towie in southwest Wales. He's probably had more salmon than anyone else, you know.
Yeah.
But
it's a very successful method. I know quite a few people who do fish that, especially even in the summertime. They just constantly, it's kind of, people say you don't catch running fish, but I disagree. I think you can catch running fish. So if a fish is running, is this fish running along the bottom of the river, and is he going deep into the pool and then coming up and then down into a big gully and then back up? Or is this running fish constantly swimming up at a nice sort of steady height, sort of a couple of foot under the surface? And that's what you've got to be like. That's what I'm always thinking of as well. So this sort of water I'm fishing, it's not far from tidal water. My chances are this fish is going to be running through that I'm going to be fishing for here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like,
I don't know if it's the same for salmon in the rivers so much, but I spend a lot of time in Ireland, and in the lochs there, when the salmon run up into the lochs, unless you can, when you're fishing on a boat, this is now, if you can't see the bottom, you won't catch a salmon. They're all
really,
they're all in 6 foot, 8 foot maximum.
Yeah, just come through the easiest part of the water. Why put themselves through sort of more challenging water when they can come up the easier route? And usually in the springtime as well, because we've got high waters and stuff like that, I would have been expecting to kind of get my fish pretty much near enough on the dangle where I'm kind of just a couple of metres in from the side. Do you know what I mean? Because usually you've got your high water, so they'll come up the side of the river. But this year, again, with the water temperatures being low, the takes have come. I mean, even with the kelps, I'm taking them like right in the middle of the stream. Do you know what I mean? They're coming right up the middle because there's no challenge with the flow. Yeah. Salmon fishing. I have all these theories and I still don't know the answer.
Sometimes it takes some motivation when it's wet and cold March time. You know, I went out today. I didn't actually fish. A few of the boys fished, and do you know what? I can't get the motivation to fish. But I'm more of a. I like the start of the season and it's fresh, and I don't fish the winter at all. Now I noticed on your Facebook page you've got a few fish. You've got a few pictures of grayling. Do you do much of that in the winter?
Yeah, well, yes, I do. We've got quite good grayling rivers where we live, and obviously the salmon season kind of finishes, and I'm not massively into my trout and grayling. If I was to go out, and obviously I've got a family and things, so I'm a bit tired. I can't just fish when I want. It's kind of, I've got to allocate time to family and allocate fishing time, which is really difficult. So
That's why the children go fishing then?
Yeah, come on, we're good. Well, it does happen a lot down the summer as well. We'll say, right, let's take the dogs for a walk down the river, eh? We'll have a lovely night and we'll have a barbecue and we'll just carry a rod with us as well. But over the winter time, I do. I mainly just do a bit of nymphing. I do a little. I've had one or two on the dry this year over the winter as well. But it's just something to pass that time until sort of salmon fishing seasons again. I'd rather be out fishing for something than nothing at all.
I know a lot of people who are into the double hand and the spey casting. They get just as much enjoyment casting as they do actually fishing. Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's obviously another thing I've been studying for is I've started studying for my EAP guide. In double-handed spear casting, because like you say, I do love the fishing, do love being out catching fish, but there's just something so, I don't know what they call it, elegant or interesting, or just something so satisfying about being able to go to put a really good, I'm working on a spear line at the moment. Not many people fish spear lines now. Everybody's kind of on shooting heads, but to go for my qualification, I'm working with like a 50-foot spear line, and you've really, really got to get it right. But when you get your timings right, it just absolutely flies out. Minimum effort. It's such a satisfying feeling when it does go right. So I do know a lot of people who do.
It's like therapeutic, isn't it? I suppose.
Definitely as well. Right. So you're not just learning about fishing, you're learning about spear casting. It's like they say, it is an art in itself. Yeah.
So how did it all start for you then? When was the first time you picked up the rod?
I picked up a rod about 6 years ago, believe it or not. My partner fished a little bit, not much. He was just into his spinning and stuff like that. He used to go spinning for salmon and stuff like that. He did a little bit of trout fishing at the still waters on a single-handed, but was never into it. And
All right.
he took me out one time and took me to a reservoir and did a bit of bait fishing, with the maggots and split shot weights, getting them down. And I started off, that's how I caught my first fish. And I thought, oh, I like this. And then we kind of progressed onto the river, and then I started catching little brown trout with little meps and things like that. So I was like, oh, this is good. And it was going a little bit further. And there was one day I was fishing and I was just with a little mep again for trout. And this next thing, I got this great big pull. And it was on the River Tees. I don't know if you know the Tees. If you like your trout and grayling, it's quite popular for it. Not big fish, but you get them in large numbers. And it was this 12-pound River Tees salmon I'd hooked, and it was just really unexpected. And I was playing it on 3-pound line, and I got it in. I was like, what on earth is this? And so I was like, come on, we go to the pub so I can tell everybody about what I've caught. Oh, that was it. So kind of, we're in the fishing club, and I spent the first season just spinning for salmon and sea trout. And then I seen somebody fly fishing one day, and I just said, what's that? And my partner went, don't. He said, don't even bother. It's too hard. It's too complicated. Just leave it alone. And I'm like, no, I'm a typical woman. When somebody tells you no, it's like, yeah, challenge me. I seen somebody fishing one day, and I thought I wanted to try it. And I booked a lesson, and I got a lesson, and I had a couple of single-handed lessons, and then went out and did a little bit of nymph and watched YouTube and started catching just little smolts and things at first. But it was like, we've got to start somewhere, haven't we, when we start fishing? So I think you really, really enjoy it when you're trying a completely new method of fishing, and then you start to get the return when you start to get a take of fish, and you think, I'm getting it now, I'm doing something right. And then it kind of like, oh, I would like to catch a salmon on one of these. And that's when obviously the double-handed side come into it. Yeah, I went and had a lesson in spear casting. And I've got to admit, I think it was the worst 6 months fishing of my life. I have never, ever, ever found casting double-handed spear cast. I've never found something as so frustrating in all my life. Yeah. I think I did well to stick it out. It is so difficult, and you've just got to go out and just keep practicing and it's weird because it's even like trout fishing with shooting heads. You've got to have your line out before you cast it.
Quite.
And you're trying to flick a line over when you can barely do a cast properly. So I was literally fishing like just a rod's length of line when I first started. And I started the double-handed casting, I think it was in the May. And I went all summer, and I was out all the time. I was just cast, and went up to the South Tyne to a place called Alston. I think it was £30 a day to fish, and hit it on spit, and there we go into my first salmon on the fly, and it was just
no turning back then.
It was a traumatic experience, let's just say, very dramatic. It was right at the end of the season, but it was just swinging it around, and I thought, I'll never forget it. I was like, is that a rock? And then it just gives you that little pull back, and I kind of turned around to my husband. I went, I think I've got a salmon. He went, you haven't. He said, I've just fished there. I said, I'm telling you. And then off for where it went, and my mouth went dry, my knees were shaking. I was like, I can't cope. I was like, just get it in quick.
You can't explain to people who haven't experienced it, can you?
No, it is. I mean, it's exciting. When I fish for trout and grayling, it's exciting, but I think everybody who fishes has a favourite species that you have a go-to. I mean, what's yours?
Ferox, big trout, big brown trout.
Yeah. And when you get a big one on and things like that, it's just, even now, you must still get that feeling every time.
Yeah, and I think it's because they're so few and far between. You don't get lots of them, and it's almost like the bad days make the good days so good. When you actually get one in, it's that much more pleasing.
Yeah, and if you got them every time you went out, yourself, it's like it's not like it's not fishing. It becomes catching, not fishing.
Yeah.
And I think when you work for something, and again, like yourself, when you're studying the river and you're trying to think, right, what colours are working, what food? I mean, for your trout, what's on the feed? Do you know what I mean? You can't just turn up, chuck something. I mean, if you're very, very lucky, you can.
Was that the end of the season, was it?
Yeah, that was like literally the end of September.
Yeah. I don't mind I like the autumn colours. Autumn especially is a nice time to be out. And you have an autumn fish, it's just as nice, you know, just because it hasn't got the silver bar.
No, and it's not. And I think, I mean, everybody's different. Some people do just prefer to fish for the spring fish. That's fair enough. I mean, I've been fly fishing 5 years since I caught my first salmon on the fly, and they're all still as equally as precious to me.
Yeah.
And I think, like, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as if it's a back end fish, and it doesn't matter whether it's a back end or a spring fish, as long as you handle them fish with care and you get them back as safe as possible, it's still a salmon. It's still a salmon. Do you know what I mean? And it's a massive achievement for anybody getting them.
Yeah. Does your partner still fish?
He does. He doesn't go out as much as me. It's me who's got the real kind of bug for it. But yeah, I don't know whether he's. I don't know. I'm still trying to decide. I don't know whether he is actually good or whether he's lucky. And to be honest, I say that we do have days out fishing for so many times, depending on what the catches is, what the ratio is. It can get a little bit sensitive at times.
Yeah.
So
you started him fly fishing then, did you?
Yeah. So he'd done a little bit on the stills, but he'd never. And he's brilliant. We come away with similar numbers, but if he fished as much as me, maybe he would catch me. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I've been known to shed a tear or two on the bank when he's had one and then another one, and I'm still studying, thinking, what am I doing wrong? But it's a nice day out when you both go out and catch, but you know that's very unlikely to happen unless you're hitting the river very right. But it's good, and it's good to have that kind of couple time together as well. Like I say, we've got a family, and it's what do we do for a night out? Instead, most people go to the cinemas, most people go for a meal. We'll say, let's just go and book a day's fishing somewhere, and it's kind of just having that chill out time from everything.
I have vouchers available to spend on my online shop for signed prints, plus gilly kettles and other accessories, or for one of my tuition packages. Plus, I'm now taking bookings for my Corrib Ferox days this season.
Basically, I've suffered with anxiety and panic attacks from about the age of 23. I lost all my family at quite a young age, and death exposure was something I've seen quite a lot of.
Yeah.
And whatever's happened there, it started to have a rub off on me and started affecting my mental health, and then I started having these panic attacks. Literally to the point where I thought I was going to have to ring an ambulance because I thought I was having a heart attack and dying. And then I kind of started over worrying about death, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die, and what's the feeling of dying going to be like? And just letting my brain run away to a ridiculous level where I was like sleeping through the day. I couldn't connect with the children. And this has gone on for years. So I did the obvious. I went for counselling, and I got to talk and let quite a few feelings out. And then there was the kind of medication route we went on, and I was being on, I remember at one point in my life I'd been on that many different medications, and I said to my doctor, there has got to be something that's going to stop this. She went, I can't give you anything else.
Yeah.
She went, I'm literally running out of options for you. So then I had a bit of CBT training, which did help, and it was definitely controllable. But after a few months, it would just creep back. And then obviously I started fishing. And what I started to notice is because I started to dedicate so much time into the sport, and I was trying to learn so much about it, like you're saying, about fishing equipment, about fishing techniques, different type of fish. I've got all these things going on in my head.
It's
and
occupying your mind.
The river. Yeah. And then the next thing I thought, and my husband will go, he says, you've been like much better in yourself. He said, I feel like you're actually with us at the moment. Like anybody who suffers with anxiety, I've always said it's a mental health. I would rather have 2 broken legs over suffering mental health. It is just the worst, because on the outside, you look totally fine. And like, I'm a dead bubbly person, and to look at me, you think, God, like, you would never dream of thinking that I suffered with something like that.
Yeah.
And then you kind of you feel like people think you play on it and stuff like that. But going back to the fishing, I was thinking, do you know what it is? I would come back from the river and think, God, I haven't worried for like an hour. And then next thing I noticed, I haven't worried for a couple of hours. And what I was doing is by fishing, I was distracting my brain. So by distracting my brain, it was me then knowing to myself, saying, actually, you can control this problem here. You're letting the brain control you. You need to control your brain. And there's proven fact there that by being on that river, I have not worried for a 2-hour period.
Yeah.
So I'm controlling the worry time. So there is a such thing of having a worry time. And by fishing from now, like I say, it's been 5 years, I'm at the first time in my life since the age of 23, I've been nearly a year and a half free of any medication, a year and a half free of a panic attack. And I do get mild anxiety sometimes, but I've never, ever been as good as what I am now in the whole time of suffering.
Yeah.
So it has something to, it speaks for itself. There's something to answer for it there. So I'm not saying it will fix everybody, but it's fixed me. It's not saved my life, but it's given me I'm living again.
I guess the only time you get anxious now is if the fish is going to come off.
Yeah.
They should prescribe it even, you know?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that should be pushed more. And it's like you're saying, you've got the distraction there for your brain, but it's also kind of like a bit of, I would say, like meditation time. When you're on the river and it's very peaceful. I mean, yeah, sometimes it's blowing a hoolie and your line's getting in knots and it is frustrating, but you know yourself, you go out on a summer's night, the sun's dropping down, you've got an evening hatch on, there's deers coming down the river for a drink, or there's a otter coming up to share the fish with you, and I'm seeing things that I've got friends who don't fish, and I think, you've seen nothing but Coronation Street all your life. And I say this to them, and you kind of, that thing, what you're getting there, that's the things that come for free in life.
Yeah.
And I do believe you kind of connect with nature, and I think that is a natural calming thing for the body.
Yeah.
It's nature at the end of the day, and we're kind of part of nature as well, aren't we? And I think there's got to be something there that creates that soothing kind of calming atmosphere, and the water kind of, the white noise of water flowing in the background.
I think there is something with water, some connection there. And you know what, during lockdown, a lot of people struggled during lockdown. I loved it, to be honest. All right, I didn't make any money, but I'd go up the lake, up to Talabont, there's a reservoir here, and I'd be there in the evening, and I'd have the whole place to myself. And I was catching these fish, and I could do, like, the cuckoo, and then when I was playing this one fish, I netted it, and it was a hedgehog. Just literally standing next to me, watching me fish and watching me play this fish.
Oh, amazing.
And then
brilliant.
I was like talking to this hedgehog. I got a new friend, right? and then behind me then, there were fox cubs. There was 3 fox cubs playing.
No way.
And I thought, and there's other people sitting at home watching Love Island. And I thought, this is what it's all about. You know, I was well happy.
Yeah, that's like you say. That's a special memory there, and you'll always remember it. And it's just the little things in life that come for free that give you that satisfying feeling in life. And you think, you know, it is. I know now where the lifestyle I live, where I go out and fishing and things like this, I'm kind of re-educating my brain. Think, you know, I've made the most of my life. I've seen what this world has to offer, and I think that's what you see when you're fishing as well. And I don't know where about the world and things you've been. I haven't been worldwide massively yet fishing, but it just takes you to some like incredible places, and you would never ever see these places if you weren't fishing.
And what's nice about it, I think, it puts you in touch with like-minded people, you know, so you're mixing with people who are into the same thing as you and the same mindset as you, and that in itself is good, you know, you're in another community. Definitely.
It's its own world, and since starting fishing, I've made friends now who are probably closer to me than people who I like socialised with before fishing, and we share the same interests. And you might only meet up a couple of times a year, but you keep in touch all the time, and then you ring each other up, and next thing you know, you're chatting an hour about fishing, and it's just you're sharing that same interest. Where people who don't fish will just be like, "What are you on about?"
I know, they don't get it, do they?
No, and it isn't. It's like you said. We sit and chat now. We could probably chat here for hours about fishing. It just doesn't seem to. You don't seem to run out of conversation. There's always something to talk about, and
Have you got into
It's
tying
like, what-
flies?
I've tried. So I bought. The problem I'm finding with it, it's expensive to start.
Yeah.
So I went out and I thought, right, I'm gonna tie a cascade. I looked on YouTube, found a couple of videos. So I went out and bought all the materials for a cascade. So somebody give me advice. Got a pack of hooks. I needed some tinsel for this, tinsel for that. This thickness thread for that. I need bucktail yellow, bucktail orange, and
Yeah.
I think I spent about 60 quid. And I started. Now I've tied a few, and they were, and the tying part wasn't hard. The part that's hard is the materials. So now I want to move on to tie another fly. I need this, and this. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
I think the second time I went out, I spent £60, and I was like, oh my God, this is madness. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, it put me off. And I think my aim there, what I think would be good for me as well, is to go and sit with somebody one-to-one and do a bit of tying. It's good watching it on YouTube, but when you start, where am I going wrong here? Something's going wrong. I mean, YouTube's really good, but I do think when you're in person, going to sit down with somebody or going to a fly tying event, I think that's what I need to spend more of my time on so that I can get more kind of one-to-one sort of hands-on experience of how to do it.
Yeah.
I would love to tie my own because I know in my head what I want to fish, and sometimes I can't buy what I want to fish.
And there's a lot of good fly tyers out there now, which can supply
brilliant.
flies, and even bespoke ones who said, "Oh, you want an alley shrimp with something else, another tag," So it's a lot more accessible now to get what you want, and it's not. It's cheaper to actually do it that way, but it is something nice to tie your own. But it can be expensive, to be honest. Even
that's
now.
what I found. Definitely find, and there's a lot of good tyers on the out there. And you can usually message them. And there was a guy up in Scotland, guy called Ronnie Fraser, and he does really well with his spring salmon and stuff. He's a fantastic fisherman. He made a fly called the Roncade, and it's a really sparse, nice fly. And somebody gave me one day. I thought, I love that fly. And I thought, do you know what it is? I want one for my river, but my river's a spate river, and it's a very peaty river. So I messaged him. I said, don't suppose you could do me a fly with like that, but with these colours? And he made me them up, and they were amazing. And I caught on them. So definitely you can get more bespoke going direct to somebody who's an independent tyer than you can kind of walking into the shop.
So have you got any goals for this year?
No, like I say, I am studying for my AAP guy. I was going to try and push for a May exam, but I'm not ready. I know I'm not ready, and I wouldn't like to set myself up to something I was going to fail in.
Yeah.
So, and it's just to go out and enjoy the fishing, and I keep telling everybody, I'm coming up there this year. I've been telling people this for 2 years. I'm coming up, and it just seems like I can't fit it all in. There's not enough time for it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully,
So
I'm coming up in April. Anne Woodcock has tried to arrange a trip. So when I'm up there, I'll definitely have to let you know. You'll have to be my guide for the day.
Brilliant. You can guide me onto the Tweed trout because they're fantastic, apparently.
Do you know what? I've only been once when I was a kid. I used to go on holidays to Scotland as a kid, and I went to Peebles, and I had a load of trouts on the river then that day.
But there's when you salmon, I know some people say I haven't had one, but when I've been fishing with some people, I've had like £3 trout, £4 trout. I mean, that's cracking, isn't it?
Jeez, that's phenomenal.
I wouldn't mind. Yeah, so if you are up, don't bring just your salmon gear. Make sure you bring your trout gear, and then you can teach me about trout fishing.
Absolutely.
That's the deal.
Before we wrap up, there's one more question which I ask. Where would you want to be to make your last cast?
Oh, that has to be one of the most difficult questions you could ask anyone. There's quite a couple of places, but I think if it was kind of on UK soil, it would maybe be the Findhorn, because that has to be one of the prettiest places I've fished so far. But there's also on my bucket list, which I'm hoping to go for my birthday in a couple of years, but I want to fish it before I go, and that's in Alaska.
Oh,
and I want it to be in the autumn when I'm kind of fighting the bears off for them. I want to see a bear come and try and fight me for a salmon. I watch videos and I just think that is amazing. There's the salmon jump, and the bears are stood literally fishing next to the fishermen. I've got to do it. It's got to come off the list.
I can imagine
So
you
that, I
saying
think-
to the bear, don't even think about it.
Yeah. Say, come on then. Put them up.
Yeah. Well,
I'll trade you a picnic for the fish. I'm going to do it, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the chat.
Definitely. And let me know when you're up at the Tweed, and we'll I'll try and get up and we'll have a cast together.
Absolutely. Look forward to that.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Many thanks, Lucinda. Speak to you soon.
Thank you. See you later. Bye.
If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to listen to more, please consider becoming a Patreon. Well, you will get over 100 past episodes and weekly podcasts, plus photography and exclusive content. To join, visit patreon.com/casting with Ceri Jones, or see the link on my website, castingwithcerijones.com. Well, that's all for now. Tight lines and don't strike too soon.